Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome to this weekly Precious Metals Review with Andy SCHECTMAN. You can find his work at milesfranklin.com. Let's give him a big warm welcome back to the show. Andy, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, JC. Always good to be here, buddy.
Good to have you. It's been a crazy week in terms of the news cycle, but Andy, let's start here. This struck me as very important in the bigger landscape. And of course, the mainstream news is not making a big story about it, and they're not connecting the dots here for the audience. Can we spend a little bit of time here, Andy, sharing with the audience your thought as to why this agreement here between Russia and the Saudis is really a game changer? Let's start there.
You know, a week or so ago, Sunday, maybe it was 2 weeks already, we had the 50th anniversary of the U.S. severing completely its relationship to gold with, at least with other central banks. And in 1971, when Roosevelt, that was 1933, when Nixon closed the gold window and made the dollar completely fiat. And what has enabled the dollar to be the world reserve currency has been its relationship to oil as the de facto petrodollar, a deal struck between Saudi Arabia and Henry Kissinger. And what that deal really centered around was, yes, they wanted to be paid in dollars, they wanted money, but what they also wanted was protection. And the US government and the US military promised to protect Saudi Arabia from invaders or external threats. And we've been the largest supplier of weaponry to Saudi Arabia. And if you look at the debacle that is Afghanistan and how, from an international perspective, one has to wonder just what kind of an ally is the United States when they pick up and run and leave so many people in harm's way. I find it very interesting that Saudi Arabia and Russia have signed a military cooperation agreement. This is a big deal. Is it the beginning of the end of the dollar as the world de facto petrodollar world reserve currency? You know, JC, I've been talking for a year and a half now that it's been my opinion that the dollar will be challenged probably from the BRICS nations, Russia, Brazil, China, South Africa, India, etc., for singular world reserve status. You know, Alistair McLeod came out the other day saying that he believes China to have 38,000 tons of gold. That would be almost 5 times what the US supposedly has. When you look at all the pegs that the Chinese have put into place, the Chinese petro-yuan, which is a way for other countries to buy oil in the petro-yuan bond and convert it into gold immediately on the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the system that mirrors the SWIFT system that Russia developed that now the whole BRICS community has adopted, and it's spreading across Europe. The infrastructure internally, we talk about how they build 12 airports a year and they have advanced roads and bridges and, you know, a wonderful internal infrastructure, even ghost cities, for goodness sake. And now the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative building the most ambitious external infrastructure. You are witnessing, I believe, a transition, a shift of power away from the US dollar as the preeminent, or at least the de facto world reserve currency. When you see the mismanagement of the dollar, the horrible spending that the US has done, where 40% of every dollar ever created was done so last year, when you see the mismanagement of the dollar, paying people to stay home and be unproductive, and what we have done in terms of world opinion with the way that we've handled Afghanistan and the retreat from there, leaving so many people, not just Americans, in harm's way, but people who maybe Afghani or other nationalities that supported the U.S. that are just stuck in a hornet's nest. I think that there are a lot of people out there that are wondering what kind of an ally will the U.S. be if the rubber meets the road for them. So I think this is a really big deal, and the timing is a little bit, to me, either very coincidental or very frightening when you see Saudi Arabia sign a contract for military cooperation with Russia. To me, it's another nail in the coffin, and goes part and parcel with what the U.S. has been doing, not only to the mismanagement of the dollar, but the policies that they have enacted as it relates to the pandemic, and here as it relates on the global scale to our endeavors in Afghanistan. I think it's a big deal. And the Economic Ninja was talking about this the other day, and it really blew my mind. I think that this is a story that more people should really take a closer look at. It's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying in this story. Does it mean that Russia now has their back? Does it mean that we will see oil expanding into other currencies, like the new digital yuan, like the ruble, like the yen, whatever? I mean, are they going to open it up to other currencies? It sure seems like that could be on tap. So I think it's a huge deal, JC, one that people shouldn't overlook or take lightly.
Right. I love what you just said there too. And as you were talking, it reminded me of this episode that was produced, the series of episodes that were produced by Mike Maloney, I believe in beginning of 2012-13, The Hidden Secrets of Money. And I do recommend the audience, if you haven't seen this series, go check it out. It was so well produced, explaining how money is created, and it's absolutely amazing. Go check that out. It's an eye opener if you don't understand yet how this money is being created and what's propping it up. And one of the recurring themes in this series was that every time he would produce a video, he would say, "Okay, here's another nail in that coffin of the world reserve currency." And one of the last nails that he talked about was this confidence. Right, the confidence in the U.S. Dollar and the U.S. government system, in our military and all that, and of course, the military was propping maybe that leg up, that last leg of the confidence here in this game. And we've just now seen, as you said, in Afghanistan, quite the shit show, the real debacle there.
Well, and that's what it is. How much confidence is left in this country? How much confidence is left in this administration?
Right.
When you take a look at what's happening here, people may not have liked President Trump for the way he spoke, but when you compare the policies between the current administration and President Trump, his policies were so much better. He was trying to negotiate a retreat with the Taliban, one that was would have done things in a proper way and transitioned power. We just picked up and left. And not only did we just pick up and leave, we left everyone in the lurch and left billions of dollars worth of our equipment there.
And $800 million Kabul embassy to boot. Right. They're just walking away from it.
Right. And the number that I saw was something like $140 or $147 million a day for 20 years, every day. I mean, what do we have to show for it? And except embarrassment. And when you talk about the erosion of confidence, and when you talk about the one linchpin really that has been holding it all together, that being the petrodollar status, now when you see Russia, which opens the door for other BRICS nations to strike deals with Saudi Arabia, or even if it's just Russia who is aligned with the other BRICS nations like China, what does it mean for the future of the dollar? What does the new Chinese Belt Road Initiative mean when 70% of human population is being connected by a new Chinese digital yuan, 45% of global GDP before industrializing all of this, this Netherlands. So bottom line is, I think you're witnessing a scary time for the US dollar, at least in terms of its world reserve status. And that has enabled us to live in, far above our, we've been able to have a standard of living far above what most other countries would have in our position if it weren't for the petrodollar status. And
the countries that are have-nots right now are basically calling our bluff. So
and that's a big deal. And that's a very big deal, JC.
Yeah, I think so too. David Morgan tweeted this a day or two ago here. This was Gunlock's article in Zero Hedge, where he was portending that, the roadmap to losing global reserve currency status is upon us. And that quote said there, it takes a long, long time. And then suddenly it happens. So are we at that suddenly it just happened, but we don't know it yet? Was that perhaps what that meeting and that agreement between Russia and Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, that's like Ernest Hemingway. He said, how did you go broke? Little by little by little, then all at once. And that's what'll happen. We'll wake up one morning. Right. Look, you know, I've been saying publicly for a while that I really do believe that, I think anyways, and whether it's with the BRICS nations or just China, I think they'll come out and peg their new digital yuan to gold when it becomes obvious that the dollar's in big trouble. They don't want to be the fuse that sets it all off. They still have a large investment in the United States, over $3 trillion in treasuries and investments. But I do think that when you have aspirations the way they do, thinking in terms of decades and centuries, we think in terms of days or weeks. They've been planning for this. Infrastructure, internal, infrastructure, external, a system specifically designed to challenge our SWIFT system, a system specifically designed to challenge our petrodollar, a system specifically designed to challenge our COMEX. All three of these things are completely operational. And now the most ambitious infrastructure program in human history, where you're controlling all the routes of trade. These roads that are being built and these maritime channels and these railroads, they're going to be patrolled by military and only for military and for commerce. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a free-flowing route all around the globe where it emanates in China and flows through Africa, and creating a whole new ecosystem that ultimately will usurp the dollar. And this is a big deal. And this is another piece of the puzzle. And I think people need to realize that if you save completely and totally in dollars, and this continues to move the way that it appears to be moving, you're destined to go broke, little by little and all at once.
Yeah, and what you were just talking about now, the systems that have been put in place that, you know, kind of below the radar for most of the audience here, because, you know, the mainstream news don't really report it or connect the dots. You know, gold's always a pet rock, but in the meantime, we have CHIPS, which are Chinese interbank payment systems, which was in direct competition with SWIFT, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, of course, in competition there. What were the other systems you were referring to?
The Chinese petro-yuan bond. And that's where the Chinese will sell or buy oil from Iran or natural gas from Russia. They pay for it in the petro-yuan bond, which is immediately convertible on the Shanghai Gold Exchange into gold. And this is why Shanghai Gold Exchange has delivered, last time I looked, it was over 90% more gold over the last 2 years than the COMEX. And this would have been in 2020 when I really dug into it. So between 90 and 100% more gold, and the COMEX has been experiencing the biggest deliveries in the history of the market ever. Mm-hmm. You know, and like we talked about, remember, you know, all the pieces are going into place. I talk about the others a lot on your show and on other shows. This is the third group of reportables that they took possession of 2.5 million ounces of gold when it got knocked down last week. So not only do you have competition in terms of gold going on over there, you have the biggest money in the world taking gold off the COMEX. It's all one central theme. It's de-dollarization. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about the petro-yuan bond and the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the chips and the infrastructure internally and the infrastructure externally and a new digital currency and more gold than anyone in the world, and you know, the pieces are in place and they're striking.
The writing's on the wall, yeah.
And if this alliance is one that is severed between specifically the US and Saudi Arabia, and they open that up to more of a free market system, very quickly people will understand the importance of not being fully invested in dollars. And that's when you see interest rates have a very rubber hits the road moment, because this is when you see a massive dumping of dollars flooding back to our shores, creating wicked inflation and ultimately much higher interest rates. And this is the type of environment where you see governments do stupid things like nationalize IRAs and make everyone put it into an annuity, just like they talked about in 2009. And when I sold my IRAs in 2009, there was a proposal that made it down to the House floor. I've talked about this in the last few shows. I've been sending out the article to people who've asked for it. But indeed, there was a proposal to nationalize IRAs and to put them into an annuity of sorts backed by U.S. Treasuries. Well, if all of a sudden you see a good portion of the world start dumping dollars in favor of a new Chinese digital yuan or whatever it may be, a BRICS currency or something. This is why you need to be proactive in whatever it is that you do. And really the crazy thing about it, JC, is that for the first time that I can ever remember, all of the three pillars of wealth of the United States, stocks, bonds, and real estate, are at all-time highs and inversely correlated to what? Interest rates. You know, the Fed is talking about, we're going to taper. We're going to talk about taper. And they're talking about this in their Jackson Hole meeting tomorrow. And it makes me nauseous when they keep talking this way. We're going to taper. They can never taper. Let's just get it out on the table. They can never normalize their balance sheet. If they do, it's game over. They have created far too much debt at the lowest interest rates in human history. And they can jawbone all they want and say, well, what do they mean by taper? They're gonna stop spending $150 billion a month on treasuries. I mean, then what happens to interest rates? Who's the only dummy buying U.S. treasuries right now, earning 1.5% when, according to John Williams, inflation is 10 times that nearly? So I don't know. It's one of these, another piece of the puzzle, but I think people really need to take a look at this and realize that we're what, in the bottom of the 8th inning in a 9-inning ball game as it pertains to the U.S. dollar. Sure seems that way to me.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you say, again, the big money is, you know, at a rapid clip, putting their hands on physical silver and removing it from every warehouse, everywhere possible. Yeah, so, you know, right there, I mean, if we could stop the show right there. If people don't understand that, it's okay. They can move on to another show. But let me go back to this tweet that was originally sent by David Morgan, but then recaptured by Cliff. Cliff High, of course, runs these predictive linguistics, and he's saying that Mr. Silver and the Silver Guru is correct. My thinking is that the reserve currency status will be gone by March of 2022. Now, he's looking at these arcs of temporal markers, one of them being that $600 silver, which is just ahead of us now if you look at the reports that he ran back in 2017 and 18. So he's saying that most of the damage here is going to happen sometime in October through to November. And this would also correlate with that big temporal mark where $6 silver would occur just before Christmas. So it appears that we're in that timeline now. This could be one of the events. It could be the cataclysmic event that brings silver to that $600 dollar. But what else in your view maybe can push us towards that timeline? So in addition to losing the world reserve currency, in addition to people dumping their treasuries, what else is happening now in the field of view here that might affect confidence or might reduce that last remaining shred in confidence? Could it be potentially the reports of the things that start with the letter A with respect to our democracy, just to put it that way?
Yeah, you know, I've been waiting for that report forever. I was told that it's already in Congress, that they've already received the results of it and are analyzing it. Yeah, of course. I mean, if that wouldn't remove, you know, if that wouldn't really just tell people that the U.S. is beyond reproach, that they are crooked, that their elections aren't even honest, when we're supposedly the beacon of freedom in the world, I think nothing would. Look, I think most of the damage has been done already, whether you're talking from a monetary standpoint. Look, 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. And we've been printing money like there's no end, and that there are no consequences for this. And we've gutted our economy. We've paid people to stay home and be unproductive. We've killing the middle class and the small businesses. I don't know. I just think that on a large part, most of the world is looking for an alternative. And I think what would really break the dollar's backs is if one pops up. And I've been waiting for one to pop up. And I think will emanate from the BRICS nations, whether it is an effort in concert between them all or one that comes from China. I think we are getting really, really close to that. And, you know, when you see the biggest money in the world doing what they're doing and taking as much metal off of COMEX, to me, that just crystallizes my belief, because every time the price is knocked down, there are groups standing there to accumulate it. They tried to knock it down by dumping 2.4 million ounces 2 Mondays ago, and the others, this group of sovereign wealth funds, bought 2.6 million ounces, more than were used to push the ball down the ledge, snowball to get it rolling and trigger all the stops by the funds. And we're getting close, JC. I don't know what it will be. You know, when I look back over the years, most of everything we've ever talked about has come true. We base it on economics, on mathematics, and some old school logic sprinkled on top of it. But the one thing I will tell you is that it's never happened when or how we thought it would. And I think that's the hard part, trying to guess it. But when you see the cracks everywhere you look, economically, morally, socially, politically, everywhere you look, there are concerns and things that are just eroding the confidence internally and externally. So I don't know what it is, but I will tell you that I think you have to do what the biggest money in the world is doing. You have to minimize your exposure to the US dollar. And however you decide to do that, whether it be precious metals or cryptocurrencies or anything else, you need to mitigate your exposure to the US dollar. That's what the biggest money in the world is doing. And they are using things like, suppressed interest rates, suppressed gold prices. They're using the cover of these suppressed markets to reposition. And you have to just take unconventional times call for unconventional decisions, and you have to trust your gut, and you have to not do what your financial advisor would tell you to do, and that starts with realizing that profit's not a 4-letter word. If you've made all this money in equities, if you've made a bunch of money in cryptocurrencies, take some off the table, put it in real immutable wealth that has lived through every pandemic, every hyperinflation, every Great Depression, 2 world wars, almost said 3. And I think
talk about no counterparty risk too for
right.
people who are just tuning into this now, how that's important also in these very uncertain times where apparently con jobs are happening at every corner of our lives here.
Yeah, well, gold and silver are the only assets that are not simultaneously someone else's liability. The counterparty risk is gone when you hold it yourself. And, it doesn't matter how it plays out, whether it's a massive deflation or a hyperinflation. And quite frankly, I think it'll be hyper stagflation. But in that environment, counterparty risk will take on a whole new meaning when all of these entities aren't able to perform. Right. And, in a world where there's $1 quadrillion in derivatives that are all based upon a counterparty's ability to perform, and the systemic nature of everything, the relationship is so incestuous in that high, that high level banking world that you need to be your own 401k. You need to be your own annuity. You need to be your own savings account, and you can do that and get out of harm's way, because quite frankly, the rate of return that you're receiving for the risk, and normally we don't consider leaving money in a bank risky, but it is now, not only from a standpoint of debasement of the currency, but bail-ins and gating and all of the other things that if one of these pillars breaks, very quickly, everything goes pear-shaped. So I hate to sound this way, but I've what's happened in Afghanistan and seeing the Saudis meet with Russia for military cooperation, to me, it's emblematic of the end days of the US dollar being the singular world reserve currency. I really believe it is, and I think it should have gotten much more attention than it has gotten already. And I give kudos to the economic ninja who brought this up to me, because it's a big deal, and maybe a lot bigger than just about any other news story we've seen this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, let's go to this point here. Cliff was saying that with the crimes right now and all of the manipulation, I think it was in his interview with Greg Hunter, he said something to the fact that they're basically subsidizing us to buy silver here on the very cheap. And of course, we're looking at the Kitco right now. Let's talk about that. The fact that all of these manipulations are making the best opportunity maybe in our lifetimes here to get physical here and get that into our position, and talk also about the COMEX and some of the reports we're hearing that perhaps they're having trouble now delivering or getting their hands on 1,000 ounce bars for these contracts. Is there any truth to that? So let's dive into that a little bit here.
I haven't heard that, but again, nothing would surprise me. I mean, if you look at that green line and you see it fall off, there's a gentleman named Dimitri Speck. Dimitri is a brilliant chartist, and Dimitri has published charts, and I used some of his work in some speeches that I gave. And what he showed was a 10-year chart of precious metals going around the globe, all 24 hours over 10 years put into one chart. And that green line on the top chart there that goes straight down is emblematic of the PM fix in London. And the AM fix is, it would be the other green line where it's looks like a little V there, or A. It's the downward motion there. And over 10 years, every single day put into one chart, you see those two movements. You see it slam down in the AM fix, you see it slam down in the PM fix, so that it comes into New York already having one leg chopped out from underneath it. What's different now? Just like on 2 Mondays ago when they hit it in the middle of the night in the access market with $4 billion worth of gold, is that there are people there that are standing to purchase what is being naked shorting. And that's really what's very, very different. Whoever sold $4 billion worth of December futures contracts paper in the middle of the night, it was done specifically to push the ball over the 200-day moving average and to get the funds to sell and to create this perception of reality. They're doing it in broad daylight, but you can see that immediately they covered 66 million ounces of silver and 2.5 million ounces of gold the minute it hit New York, that being the commercial banks. And then you have this group, the others, who is standing there, who bought another almost 2.6 million ounces of gold at $100 subsidy. They are subsidizing us. They're subsidizing us because they're trapped. And they're trapped in a position where if it goes higher, they get crushed. And so they're trying to engineer it down so that they can cover their short positions and make an orderly retreat. One of these days, the COMEX is going to blow up. And, I always thought it was impossible, but going into the July delivery month, you had the last few days of June. You had 220 million ounces in open interest with 110 million ounces in registered bars to deliver. And so the open interest was twice what could ultimately be delivered. Now, in the very magical way that they're able to do it, and I suppose they incentivize people with these contracts to cash settle, pay them a few extra bucks an ounce or whatever it is, they whittled it down to 40 million ounces that was delivered. But the point of it is that we are getting close, and the biggest money in the world is standing for delivery, which, is the same thing we can say about the commercial banks. And not only that, let me see if I can find the number. I know I have it here somewhere. The other day, I found it shocking. Let me see if I have it here real quick. I don't want to waste too much time. But I saw the amount of gold that was taken out of the ETFs, or amount of silver that was taken out of the ETFs. And it was a tremendous amount. Here it was. So last week, there were withdrawals from both GLD and SLV. And this was last week. And understand that the only people that can withdraw anything out of GLD and SLV are the commercial banks, or the authorized participants that funded the two ETFs. So here's another way that they do it. So when they withdraw things out of COMEX, it shows up on the Commitment to Traders report. But when they do a share conversion, it doesn't. So in an authorized participant last week took out 159,026 troy ounces of gold from GLD and 694,830 troy ounces out of SLV. So it's interesting that they are able to change the prospectus to say that, hey, we may sell more shares than there is metal in here. They did that on February 1st, right when in the middle of the silver squeeze, when they put all this metal into the funds and then over the next 2 weeks, Goldman Sachs took 90 million ounces out of SLV. Same thing here. They let the funds, GLD and SLV, they let it go up in value. They suck it up and then put all the metal into the funds, and then they pull it out and backdoor it. They pull the real metal out, and a lot of times they'll do it after they smash the price, so they can pull it out at a subsidized price. It is a vacuum for them, and that's why I hate SLV and GLD. They're nefarious products where the commercial banks can literally pull out, billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of gold and silver. No one notices it.
Complete house of cards.
Pardon me?
I said it's a complete house of cards.
It is.
Complete illusion.
It is. And that's really what you need to understand, is that the biggest money in the world through GLD, SLV, COMEX, exchange for physical on the London Metals Exchange, any way that they can, they're taking the real thing and they're using the manipulated price to do it.
Well, maybe you guys should do the same. Andy, we're running out of time for this show here today. I'm backed up to another commitment to here right after this. So before we go, you sent me a special for this week here. So let's talk about inventory, how things are going. I saw Jim Montgomery here on the chat saying, hey, he just got his last delivery from Andy on Tuesday. Congratulations, Jim, for empowering yourself there with some physical. So what do we have for this week for the audience here at Beyond?
Those are the silver kangaroos. Premiums keep edging down, which kind of surprises me, really. Look, there's just not as much supply out there ultimately, I think, as there will be demand. This is a sweet spot. They've held the price down. The premiums have come down. This is as good of an entry point as we've seen really in way over a year for sure. And those are the mini mint boxes of kangaroos. They're the only major of the 6 major mints that makes coins that don't come in a box of 500. Those are boxes of 250. We've lowered them continuously week over week down to 380 over spot. That should be as good of a price as you'll find anywhere. They're brand new 2021s, and they're the purest silver coin in the world at 4.9 fine. They and the Canadian Maple Leaf are the only two 4.9 fine. So great value, great premium in stock, awesome coin, one of the 6 major mints, and a good way to do what the big money is doing. Ignore what they're saying, do what they're doing, and mitigate your exposure to financial assets in the US dollar. And I think you'll certainly steer a little bit clearer of the carnage when things finally do change, because they will all be affected at the same time. They are all too far correlated to one another, stocks, bonds, and real estate. And if the Fed really does start to taper and you see interest rates rise, you'll understand the importance of not being fully invested in those 3 assets.
Right. God help you. Let's give a quick update here to the Canadian subscribers. Of course, I did a show with Janine last night. We have a big Canadian audience, and I saw quite a few of these contact forms going through last night to try to avail themselves of this current promotions. So what's going on here for the new project you want to put in place here for our Canadian subscribers to not only reduce the cost here in terms of being able to purchase in Canadian dollars, but also have the delivery here from the Canadian sources here in your contact list?
Yep, we're still a few weeks away. The paperwork has already been, everything has been signed, but the banking paperwork, the agreements are in place. The website is pretty much done. We'll be there. And what we're basically doing is opening up Miles Franklin Canada so that we can help Canadian consumer so they don't have to send a wire in US dollars. And that conversion into dollars and sending the wire makes it right now, it makes it slightly uneconomical. And as a result, with one of our very close friends in the industry who is very tied in with the Royal Canadian Mint, we are opening up Miles Franklin Canada. We're still a few weeks away from it, JC, but we're saving all of those names, all of the Canadian names, and the minute we're ready to go, every one of them will get offered something really special. We'll send them some emails and try to make it really worth their while to work with us. Look, if people have accounts in the US and don't mind sending US dollars, we can ship it directly from Canada right now. It's just in the payment process, converting the dollars and wiring. Now, I had someone contact me from Canada that wanted to pay in Bitcoin. Now, that was a way to do it where it didn't matter. Certainly, it says a lot for the for that type of payment system on a distributed ledger versus having to to convert and pay wire fees and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, bottom line is that we will be able to very soon take payment in Canadian dollars and ship directly from several places in Canada. Toronto and Vancouver and Montreal will all be points of distribution. So it'll be great, but we're still a few weeks away.
Okay, very good. I appreciate that. And what you just said also, maybe for Canadian subscribers here who don't want to wait right now, but do have possession of Bitcoin, they can also pay you directly in Bitcoin and have that shipment made from your facilities here in Canada.
Yep. The only reason we only take Bitcoin and not Ethereum or anything else,
right,
or like Theta, like Bix would like, is that the only crypto that is hedgeable right now, at least on COMEX, is Bitcoin. So we can take anyone who's got Bitcoin, we'll lock in an order, send them a BitPay link, and process it that way, and it clears instantly.
Okay, very good. Well, that's exciting news, Andy. We look forward for that. And at the same time, again, we were running some surveys here in the last couple of days to ask people how happy they were with our affiliate programs. And again, nothing but great news for you guys. We really appreciate it. I know you've been busy because a lot of these forms are going through my desk here in the last couple of weeks. So incredible times, and I think people get it. We're at that point now. And I know we sound like broken records. We've been saying this for a long time, but we've never had the series of outlier events that we have now happening here in physicality and in mainstream news. Even though they're not connecting all the dots for you, all the evidence is there that the writing is on the wall.
You know what? One of my favorite little trite statements is the little boy does see the wolf at the end of the story. And I am the poster child for the little boy who cries wolf. I give credit to the people that have been able to keep the ball up in the air as long as they have. But like what we're seeing with Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan and all these pieces, it's getting harder to keep it up in the air, I'll tell you that much.
Right. Somebody was asking very quickly, Andy, before we go, I think it was Michelle, she was saying, how much is the shipping cost? I'm not sure if she's from US or Canada. So can you explain the two variants there? For
when we deliver it from Canada, it's pretty much $25 flat fee. And most of the time we'll eat that. If it's over 100 ounces or whatever, we'll eat it. Or over 5 ounces of gold. And most of anything that we will ship right now will come from Canada, and it won't come from the US, unless the person wants, US mint products like a US Silver Eagle or Gold Buffalo. And I don't say Gold Eagle because Gold Eagle is 22 karat. Even though it has an ounce of pure gold in it, it has 1/10 of an ounce of silver, which decreases the purity. And as it goes across the border, anything that's not 24 karat or 3/9 fine in silver would be dinged at the border and VAT taxed at a 13% rate. So basically nothing. The shipping is next to nothing. Put it that way.
And for the American subscribers, what's
the American subscribers? Same thing. It's going to be free shipping on anything over 100 ounces of silver or 5 ounces of gold. But the most it ever is $15. That's our flat rate. If someone buys 5 silver coins or 90 silver coins, it's $15. That's it. And that doesn't even cover the cost of shipping it with insurance.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. So folks, check it out. If you want some silver here, these amazing 1 ounce silver kangaroos at 380 over spots are available now. Check it out at beyondmystic.net/silver. This was the weekly Precious Metals Report with Andy SCHECTMAN. Of course, you can find him also at milesfranklin.com. Meet us again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the next show. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Andy, for being here. Have a great day, man.
Stay well, JC. See you next week.
Au revoir.